Hi, everyone. So happy to see you all here today. While everyone's coming in, if we can just type into the chat your name and your program name. And I'm interested in hearing specifically one of your biggest challenges as a leader. So, when things get rough, what is the hardest thing for you? And I'm not looking for short-staffed. I'm looking for how do I hold my staff accountable when I'm short-staffed? Things like that. What is one of the biggest challenges that you have that you've encountered this year specifically when it comes to your leadership and your leadership style in your programs? And that can be with parents. So if you don't have employees that you're watching and that sort, love to hear about how that works for you with parents and what you do with them. So welcome to week 5, our last one of this tiny training series on creating a culture that attracts and retains families and employees. Happy you're here today. Just a little bit about 0 to 5. 0 to 5 Montana works to increase access to early care and education while supporting families, uplifting voices, and empowering childcare businesses across Montana. It's my honor to work with each of you, and I would like to just start today with a very big and sincere thank you for the hard work that you do. You guys are truly the workforce behind the workforce. You work hard every single day, and the work that you do makes such a difference in our state and every single one of our communities across the state. So you're a really important part of our lives, and I just want to say thank you to that. Just want to remind you a little bit about 0 to 5. We have two sides to our programs. We have a policy side that does a lot of advocacy and policy work. They do a lot of work with legislation during session. And then there's the program side of the team. And on that program side of the team is Montana Child Care Business Connect, which is where I work. And we work really hard to help child care providers become business savvy. And we want to give and support all that we possibly can to help your businesses be successful. And then here's our series outline. We're on week 5, the very last week. And today we're going to actually talk about like what do we do when we hit some road bumps, when things get tough and rough and tumble, um, when it's time to roll up our sleeves, but we feel like we also want to pull our hair out. How does our culture come into play when we're doing these things? So I'm just going to pause and read a couple of the comments that are in here so far. Ariel talks about poor communication, which she thinks either leads to or is a symptom of a poor work environment. And I'm going to tell you, communication tends to be one of those big ones for our work environments. And so, yeah, definitely something to keep in mind. Let's see here. We also have Genevieve says that her biggest challenges right now are around communicating in a way that holds boundaries, but doesn't trigger people who've got a hard time with feedback. And feedback is one of those challenging things. And I'm going to encourage everyone that we can't solve feedback challenges in a 30-minute tiny training. But I will say that we're going to have a leadership series that's coming in the summer. And we have one that'll be in July and one that'll be in August. They'll be on two different topics. But they'll be 4 weeks long, and we can tackle these deep, hard things in those trainings. So stay tuned for some of those deep dive type leadership trainings that are coming. Becky talks about delegating. Delegating is so hard when you know that you want it done the way that you want it done. Just giving the reins over to someone else and letting them do it can be a really big challenge. And I'm going to say that everything that you guys wrote in here are great things to think about. One thing that I want you to think about is just let's take a step back and think about what we've done so far. So throughout this series, we've talked about defining our mission. We've talked about clarifying that with a vision, that forward thinking. And then with that vision, we've identified our values, and then we built systems around how to reinforce this really cool culture. Once you've done that, That's going to be a really good groundwork for what it would look like to have perfect culture in your program. But today we're focusing on what happens when pressure hits your program. Anyone had any pressure lately? Will you all on the count of three? I want a waterfall because I think every answer is almost going to be the same. In the chat, let's hear what your biggest challenge is on a day-to-day basis in your program. Biggest challenge, one, two, three, go. Steph says parents saying that they want X. I get that one too. Parents, parents. Well, you guys surprised me. Negative atmosphere. That is a huge challenge. We don't want that, right? We want to have positive, happy, great culture in our places. So that's really important. So parents are a challenge. So can staff be, and so can being short-staffed. And so the whole point of talking about having good culture in our programs is so that we can create a culture where employees want to stay. And I really love that we're going to be talking about that a little bit. Because I just want to say that strong culture is not tested during our calm seasons. It's tested during the difficult ones. It's really easy to talk about our values when staffing is full, families are happy, and things are running smoothly. The real test, it comes when you're short-staffed, a parent has complained, that parent complaint escalates, you have some licensing changes or pressures or new systems to learn, or you're just frankly burnt out. And here's what often happens in those moments. Programs drift. They don't do it intentionally, they do it slowly. They do it reactively and out of survival. Standards loosen, communication weakens, your hiring becomes reactive. I just need a warm body in the room. Today, we're going to talk about how stronger leaders protect their culture during stressful times, not by pretending that things aren't hard, because we know that things can be hard. Okay. So that's not what we're pretending about. What we're talking about here is leading through a stormy time or a difficult time or a troublesome time with real intentionality. Because the way you lead during the hard season often defines your culture more than any easy season will. So Genevieve, you talked about covering holes in schedules when people are out and finding good subs. Girl, you're speaking to what everyone else in here. I'm positive that you could have 500 amens. It is true that we really are challenged with these tricky things, and that's exactly when drift starts. And so I really want us to focus on that today. So let's start with just being honest. It is a emotionally demanding work being a childcare leader. You've got parents, you've got staff, you've got kiddos, and all of them need you. And the reality is that the pressures are constant and they're constantly pushing against that culture that you're working hard to create. Staffing shortages often force leaders into that survival mode. Survival mode can be the death of a culture. Difficult family situations can create emotional strain, they can create pressure, and it can start having you compromise boundaries in your program because you guys are all loving, you don't want to push, and sometimes you let your boundaries be pushed instead. Burnout impacts patience, communication, and consistency both for leadership and staff. Like licensing changes and pressures can start to have this fear-based leadership instead of having a culture-based leadership that's aligned with your beliefs and values. Financial stress often tempt programs to prioritize a short-term survival. I just got to get through this month. I just got to get until I can get a few more kiddos, until I can get another staff member. And what you guys find is you're always in this constant loop of until. We want to avoid that. None of those challenges means that you're failing. It is a reality of the business that you guys do, no question. They're a part of leading childcare businesses, but they do create this pressure and they create serious pressure points on your company culture. And how you handle that will determine whether you're strengthening or eroding that culture that you've worked so hard to identify. Strong leadership isn't about avoiding pressure. It's about responding to pressure without abandoning your values. Can anyone relate to that? Sometimes it's really tricky to stay tied to them. I'm going to just cover this class and absolutely be in there just today. And then you find that it comes Thursday and you've worked inside the classroom every day because you couldn't help because you had staffing shortages and things like that. All of this is the reality of what you guys are doing. One of the biggest risks during these stressful seasons is what I call cultural drift. Cultural drift happens when programs slowly move away from their mission, vision, values without realizing it. Usually it happens because leaders are overwhelmed, not because you guys don't care. There's no question in my heart, you guys care amazingly. But when stress increases and short-term survival skills start taking that priority, you start to lose that long-term culture vision. Decisions become reactive instead of intentional. You find yourself at the end of the day saying, well, that was a day. Okay. If you start having more that was a day endings, there is a time to stop and realign. When you're having that was a day type endings, your communication becomes rushed, expectations become inconsistent. And this is dangerous, you guys. This is when your boundaries become unclear. And over time, staff start to feel that instability. And it's really important. People can handle hard seasons. What they can't handle is unpredictable leadership and inconsistent expectations. When we're wanting to retain our employees, we must put consistency and our culture first and foremost in everything we do. When culture drifts, trust weakens. And once we have weakened trust, we start to have a retention issue and things continue to be hard. Ariel says, I hate when I'm put in a position that feels wrong to me, but it's justified as being what's best overall. Only it's because it has corroded parents' trust, and that affects enrollment. And you're speaking right there to it. Trust is such a critical aspect of that. Ariel, thank you so much for that comment. Let's talk about what cultural drift actually looks like inside of our programs. So one common example that I think we can all admit to, let's just be honest and raise our hands and say, yep, I've been there, is that maybe we have let our standards slip. We've lowered them. Okay, it's a crazy day. I know that we're supposed to wash our hands for 45 seconds or whatever it is, but we're just going to let it go quick today. We're just going to hand out a wipe. But boy, those standards can slip really fast. Many policies stop being enforced, and then consistently because leadership feels overwhelmed and unable to address issues. Or difficult behaviors start to become tolerated because you're afraid to upset an employee. You don't want to have someone leave you because you don't want even more staffing shortages. It's really, really a challenging thing for you. Another example is hiring out of desperation. I cannot tell you, we do not believe in warm body syndrome here in Montana State. We are high quality childcare programs and we hire for culture fit. We do not hire warm bodies. When programs are under pressure, it's so tempting to hire anyone who's available rather than hiring for alignment. But misalignment hires often increase stress. And I'm going to guarantee you guys, it creates conflict with your already successful staff you have. When you avoid difficult conversations, it's another major issue. Leaders often avoid accountability because they feel conflict is damaging relationships, or you're worried that you're going to lose your staff. But you guys, avoiding accountability creates confusion and it can create resentment among your stronger team members. We want to recognize those strong team members and show them how they can encourage and help your other ones who need a little more help. Another common issue is over-functioning leadership. This happens when leaders start carrying everything themselves. And someone said it in the chat earlier, they have a hard time delegating. This is so dangerous for you as a leader. This is when you get overwhelmed. Over time, it is going to lead to burnout for you. And the patterns are so understandable. But these are those patterns that are going to weaken your culture. And I want you guys to be keen and to see it and to think about it, to be able to address it. One of the most practical leadership tools during stressful season is using your mission, vision, and values as a decision filter. Because stress creates urgency, but urgency should not replace alignment. Did you hear that? Stress creates urgency, but urgency does not replace your alignment. Before making difficult decisions, take a second, just pause. Does this align with our mission? Does this support our values? Does this move me towards the culture that I'm trying really hard to build? For example, if your value is communication, but leadership avoids hard conversations because it feels uncomfortable, your culture is going to weaken. I guarantee it. If your vision is long-term staff retention, but you repeatedly over time hire misaligned employees, and so you've created the revolving door, that's going to attack your vision. Your mission and your vision act like an anchor during these unstable seasons. They help you stay grounded when emotions and pressure are high. This doesn't mean that every decision becomes easy, but it does help you keep aligned decisions and remain aligned as you're moving through a difficult season. Strong culture requires leadership, and leadership requires discipline, especially during these difficult seasons. And discipline here does not mean perfection, it means consistency. Okay, let's pause. Everyone in the chat, write the word consistency. I want to know that that's what you're hearing. I don't think anyone wants to work for perfection. I think everybody wants to work with someone who they can count on, who's dependable, who they know what your reaction's going to be. If you're consistent, your staff know what to expect. It can take away so much more of what you're worried about. Holding your boundaries matters because inconsistency only creates confusion. Communicating clearly under pressure matters because stress often increases emotional reactions, and that's where our misunderstandings happen, you guys. Reinforcing our expectations repeatedly matters because teams need clarity during unstable seasons. And I want to pause just for a second and say, you guys are pros at this. You know how to teach consistency. You do it every time you tell your kiddos to sit on their pockets. You do it every time they wash their hands before lunch. Every time they go outside for outside time and you put on sunscreen. They consistently know what to expect. You do it so well. So it's just important to pause and remember to do it with your staff. Your staff are going to take emotional cues from leadership. If leadership becomes reactive or chaotic or emotionally unpredictable, that's when anxiety comes in. And what does anxiety create? It creates fear. And we want to make sure we're not running on fear-based leadership. When leadership remains calm, when you remain clear, when you're consistent, your team is going to feel safe. And even if it's a hard season, this is just one of the strongest ways you can protect your culture when you're under pressure. Someone in the chat says rules for some but not the others creates so many issues, whether it's for parents, staff, or kiddos. And I'm going to just amen that. I'm a big person about policies. I'll tell you if you have a policy handbook, if you're not going to enforce it, then don't put it in your handbook because it's so important that if we have a policy that we follow through with what we've set out. When programs begin to drift, leaders need intentional ways to recenter that culture back. One simple but extremely powerful strategy is simply revisiting your mission and vision very regularly. Not just during your once a year training, not just when new staff come on and on board. Just like your kiddos, teams need reminders about what they're building together. They need to feel tied to what you're doing. Another strategy is reinforcing the values consistently during staff meetings and coaching conversations. It's really important they hear you walk that walk and talk that talk. I love it when celebrations are aligned with your missions and visions. And when you can point out during a stressful season that someone is still doing something really well that's aligned with a mission and vision, that is so powerful. And it does give hope and strength, not only to you, but to the rest of the group to get through a tough season. Not every urgent situation requires immediate emotional action. And finally, Think about communicating frequently and clearly. Uncertainty grows when communication disappears. Even imperfect communication builds more trust than silence. I used to have a leader who would say, I have been so busy, I have not paused at all today, but I'm going to pause right here. What can I help you with in the next 5 minutes? I appreciated that so much that I would get 5 minutes so that I could just say, here's the big ones. Here's what I need help with right now. Those are important things for you to remember for your staff too. I want you to identify one challenge that you constantly struggle with that creates pressure on your culture. Maybe it's a staffing shortage, maybe it's parent conflict, maybe it's burnout, maybe it's emotional exhaustion, okay? But I want you to think about one. Now, I want you to think about operationally. How does that pressure affect your leadership decisions? Let's be honest. I would like to see in the chat how many people, please just throw a yes in there if you've done this. More than 3 times a week said, I just have to get through tomorrow. Yay, Becky, I'm glad you haven't had to say that. I have to say it sometimes. Okay. Not lately. These are all great things. Yes, and previous jobs too. And that's really, really important. And I agree. I feel like it every day too, Mary. Thank you for being so vulnerable and transparent there. It is really challenging sometimes. And we do feel like we have it all rolling around in this head of ours and we don't know what to do. We want to really practice and think about one thing we can work on. What proactive response could help protect alignment before that next difficult situation happens? So think about it for a minute there. I want you to think about um, what you could do in that one situation in that season. Ariel says, I know people who are more and more think it's a later day in the week and then say it's probably wishful thinking. That's a true statement too. And I think being honest and clear with ourselves when we're doing those things is really important. When you guys can take a moment and pause and really think back to this, I want you to really think about how, when you reflect back to that, are you thinking about your operational things? So if you think about everything we've learned in this system, we talked about our mission and knowing why we even exist and are in business, okay? We talked about our vision, like the perfect world, thinking forward and moving forward and what we want out of that, right? We talked about the values that we hold dear, that hold us, our staff, our parents, and our kiddos to all of the above. And we talked about systems that keep that in place. If we can identify when the road bumps come, how that bump happened, and tie it back to our mission, our vision, our values, and think about a system that can help us, how much easier it is to get back on track and moving forward and aligned with it. Oh my gosh, Steph, I love that. Steph says, even bad days, I think I'm better when the kids are here. Like seriously, they're my emotional support humans. That's awesome. I love it. As we close this series, you guys, I just need you to leave with this one idea, okay? Strong culture is not built because challenges disappear. So a perfect program does not mean you have a good culture, okay? That doesn't mean that. Strong culture is built because leaders stay aligned during challenges. Stay aligned, stay aligned, stay aligned, stay aligned. Okay, that's a really important thing that you guys remember. Pressure reveals leadership patterns. Consistency is going to build that trust. And trust is one of the strongest drivers of retention for both families and your staff. So even if you don't have staff, trust is important in your program. Your parents need to feel it. Your mission, your vision, your values, they're not just ideas for a calm season, you guys. They're leadership tools for difficult seasons too. And when leaders consistently protect their culture when they're under pressure, programs become more stable, they become more trustworthy, and this is the big one, my heart's desire. They become more sustainable over time. Burnout lessens, and we stay open. We stay happy and we stay healthy. That's the long-term work of cultural leadership. Okay. All right. So I wanted to just throw up here really quick for you guys, give you a quick pause and a chance, and I'm going to read some of the comments in the chat here in a minute. Let people come off mute and ask a couple of quick questions too at the end. But please snap a picture of the QR code. I need to know how we're doing and what you'd like to see in our upcoming leadership series. If you have any questions, this is where you can reach me and contact me. I want to encourage everyone to consider the 8 free trainings that we offer in our on childcaretraining.org. And these are free, you guys, and they're amazing. They're self-paced. You can really enjoy these. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is if you live anywhere near Anaconda, this Saturday I'm doing a live in-person training. So that means Helena, Butte, Anaconda, all you people, I want you to come to my live training. And it's going to be in Anaconda at the library. The registration link for it is in ECP, and registration is open until the end of tomorrow. So please consider registering for the leadership training that we're going to do on Saturday is going to cover 4 leadership styles that support retention and recruitment. And so all different types of leadership styles that you can learn on supporting recruitment and retention. It's a great bounce off of this topic. All right, so I am going to stop talking and I'm going to let you all come off mute. I'm going to stop recording. And if you have any questions, I'm here for you.